Let's chat now to the Chamber of Mines to get their overview and outlook for the mining sector in Zambia. Shula, thank you so much for chatting to us. So we know that mining is the biggest part of the Zambian economy. How are things going in the sector?
Well, I could say given the economic conditions that the sector has been exposed to, we still remain committed to making sure that all the macroeconomic contributions are still maintained, and that includes production, that includes investment, that includes employment, contributions to GDP, and so on. So it's been a tough time, but despite the fact that copper prices are slowly recovering, even when we had a downturn, we still remain committed to making sure that everything stays afloat.
Okay. And what is your sense of the taxation regime? We know there's been some kind of tension or dispute between yourselves and the government.
The taxation regime may be a unique animal in that, you know, the royalty taxes slide with the copper price. But I think at the time that the discussions were had, that was meant to be a coping mechanism. So it was something that it was the brainchild of both the industry and the government, in that when copper prices start to rebound, we would all benefit.
Yeah.
Keep the industry running, keep the government collecting money, and everyone keeps benefiting as a country.
And you're confident that you're at that juncture?
Well, I mean, in the long term, ideally, the tax regime should be centered around encouraging investment. But given the fact that Zambia primarily mines base metals, you would have to sit down and discuss and see how you can keep the industry afloat and keep the government making money. Because, you know, as you would know, base metals are cheap, plentiful, and the prices are determined on a metal exchange. And all those factors need to be considered in. So that was part of the information sharing that we did. And in the long term, ideally, it should be centered around encouraging investment. But for now, I think we are where we are.
Okay.
Yes.
How many people does the sector employ?
The sector, I think, would employ, well, in terms of both mining and quarrying, would be 1.7% of the people in Zambia that are formally employed.
Okay.
And that would be around 1.7%, which is 1.7% of 5.5 million people employed in the labor force, which is strictly into mining and quarrying. So, and that will encompass both direct employees, the people that are actually involved in mining and processing, and the people that are employed as contractors. So the combined number would be around 1.7% of 5.5 million people in Zambia, which is the labor force of the country.
We know that numerous international companies are invested in the sector, South Africans not excluded, Chinese as well. To what extent is there a local component of ownership in mines?
Well, in terms of the local component of ownership in the mines in the country, as you know, the mining industry in Zambia is mostly in private hands, but the government, through ZCCMIH, has a stake in equity in about almost all of the mines, and that would vary between 10 and 20% of shareholding. And so from that we receive dividends to the Ministry of Finance, which also channels one revenue stream to the government, besides the others that the mining companies have to contribute based on what is stipulated in the legislation of the country.
As you said, copper prices are beginning to recover. What is your outlook for the sector?
Well, that's a work in progress. We're still seeing what our members are based to do. As you know, based on the structural factors and legacy issues that are there in the mining industry in Zambia, we've been mining for 70 plus years. Some assets are old. Some companies are mining low-grade copper but are highly mechanized. Some companies have useful byproducts. So we are still seeing how we can try and harmonize projections, because the projections of one company would differ from the other, besides the expansion projects that are going on. So it would be a bit unhealthy for me to give projections at the moment, because even just last year, for the year 2016, we project that we'll produce 740, but we went to above 760.
Okay.
1,000 tons of copper.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we have cobalt, nickel, we have gold. So as a chamber, as the industry, I think we've taken a step back from making projections until we see how the projections will look for individual companies, and then just ramp them up as industry.
Okay, Shula, thank you so much for your time.